Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by the host of the 4th and 32 podcast, Cole Smithson and Ethan Sue. How's it going, guys?
It's going well. Thanks for having us on your podcast, man.
Yeah, really, JJ. We appreciate you, man. I'm ready to talk some good football topics today.
Yeah, I'm Cole, and my friend over here is Ethan, so everyone knows our voices. But
yep, we host a podcast called the 4th and 32 podcast. Talk everything from every week of the season to the preseason, off season, all that good stuff. All the seasons: Smith, winter, fall, spring, summer, all that jazz.
Absolutely, yeah. You can check us out at 4th and 32 podcast, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and spelled out there. We use the ampersand in the logo, but we got a really exciting thing coming this off season where Ethan is going to break down every team's positions of needs heading into the draft and free agency. So I'm really excited to get that ball rolling and check out stuff wherever you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple, 4th and 32 podcast.
All right. Again, the links of the 4th and 32 podcast will be down in the description below. All right. So before we start talking about before we start talking about the Super Bowl, because that's what we're mostly going to be talking about. But if you guys want to tell us some more about your podcast, I mean, you said where we can get it and all, but if you want to talk a little bit more about your podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah, we started it in the pandemic, like I know you did as well, and it's just a bunch of our friends come on. We have a gambling show we did during the season. We would preview every slate of games, recap it, do a Thursday night recap, and now that we have a little bit more time, we like to do stuff like trivia shows. Ethan, we call him the draft guru, Ethan Suru. He does our mock drafts, all of that kind of stuff. So that's really what we have coming at you, but it's just a bunch of friends goofing off. We like to, let our hair down a little bit, make some jokes. There's definitely some raunchier stuff on the podcast at times. Our other co-host, Michael Dwayne, loves to argue with me. So there's a lot of, a lot of profanity going around at times.
Yeah. And, it really was just started as a thing where all of us were great friends in college who all related on football. We're all fans of different teams. Mike is a masshole who loves the Patriots, and Smith loves the Raiders. I love Washington. So it's a lot of really good viewpoints. And we used to always just sit on our couches and chat it up on the daily. So we thought to ourselves, why not just make this a thing where we can actually be a little more professional about it and have fun, but really break down some good content for people. So it's been nothing but a blast for us. We're on, Smith, what's our total episode we're on? You happen to have it off the top of your head?
I know we've done like 94 this season. And so we're in the hunt. We're like probably like 160, 170. Really turned it up this season, did gambling. That's what I think was probably our coolest thing we did this season, just breaking down the games every week. Our social media manager, Will, comes on that, Will Einfalt. But it's thanks for having us on, dude.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks again for coming on. And Ethan, you just mentioned that you're a Washington fan. Of course, they have a new name, the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people on social media are liking it. What did you think of the new nickname, basically?
Oh, it's fine. My thought about it was kind of like it's safe and a bit boring. I think that they did the best that they could. Anything is better than what the name used to be. And I would have been fine if they were okay with Washington football team, but they wanted to have a brand and an image that they could really tie a fan base to. It's okay. I was a big fan of Red Wolves, to be honest.
I want to push back. It is not okay. It's horrendous. And the jerseys are trash too.
I'm a good fan. And this is why I'm a good fan, because I will blindly follow this team into darkness if it comes to it. And that means whether they're the Commanders or anything else, I just support the team, not the owner, the team.
I mean, I think the name is kind of boring, but I was hoping they would go with the Hogs or something of that nature, because that is kind of a big tradition for them. but I just feel like the Commanders is too boring of a name. I do like the jerseys though. I think they're cool. I'm not a huge fan of I guess they are a little yellow, but I do like they're all black uniforms.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of cool, but I just think they could have gone something better than Commanders. I mean, they had 18 months to figure it out, but I did do a TikTok of it and it did get a lot of views, but do you have anything else to add to that or?
No, I mean, just to like, you nailed it. Like it was so much build up just for something that was so underwhelming. So do I think they did the best with the rollout? No, but the most important thing is if they can win games in those New Jerseys, then I'm a happy fan.
Okay, so anyways, we'll probably talk about Washington a little down the road after we talk about the Super Bowl. But last week, at the time of this recording, it's Sunday, so I'm not sure exactly when this will come out, at least on YouTube. But so the Rams end up being the Bengals basically on the last drive for them. What did you think about the Super Bowl, and was there anything that really surprised you in the game?
Sure, Smith, you want to go first?
We're literally about to ask each other the same thing.
We're two polite guys, aren't we?
No,
three polite guys. Excuse me.
After you, sir.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty remarkable game. I think that it really showed how important defense was in the game because it started off strong. Rams came out and executed well. And then they went on a big lull. We talked about it on our show, how there was a big lull in the game all the way throughout from essentially like what feels like the second quarter all the way till near the end of the fourth, where they just weren't getting anything going on offense. And it felt like the Bengals had it in hand. Most of their games in the playoffs prior to, it was all defensive football that had really gotten them wins. Joe Burrow played smart, but defensive football really got them the wins they needed. And so the Rams looking flat made it seem like it was all in the Bengals side in their corner. But yeah, Rams came out strong and Stafford really put it all out there on the line on the last drive. They found Cooper Kupp a million times on the last drive, and the best team that sold out and had to win a Super Bowl won a Super Bowl. What do you think, Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you asked what was surprising about the Super Bowl, and I just can't stop thinking about the refs. And I'm not a big refs guy. I don't even know how many times I've brought them up throughout our 2 years doing the podcast now, but I thought it was a pretty bad job in general. I mean, you have the T. Higgins touchdown where he's clearly pass interference. Even if you don't see the face mask, you got a full extension of the arms, huge momentum swing. They don't call anything all game until that last drive. And I just thought overall in the playoffs, the refs did a really, really poor job. And it just like took away from the play on the field. I guess also surprising or not that surprising is the Rams defensive line. 2 years in a row, we have a team where the big story is how much pressure they get. And I thought the Bengals offensive line was bad. I didn't know how bad they could be. And the Super Bowl always kind of feels like a weird game. It's a lot longer, the halftime show, but like this one in particular just felt extremely weird and everything surrounding it was weird. I don't know. Maybe it was just the LA atmosphere, but so I don't know what you thought about that, Ethan.
Yeah, when it comes to surprises, I would say the biggest surprise was how long it just seemed like I was pretty sure that the Bengals were going to win at one point. You know what I mean? It just felt like that was going to happen. And the biggest surprise was that these coaches got out of their way. Like I thought one coach would be in their way the whole game and make a bad decision that would cost their team ultimately at the end. And I think there were moments in the game where Zach Taylor and Sean McVay both did that. But for them to get out of their own way, Sean McVay in particular, kind of just go to what you know on that last drive, and that's where you find success. That was a surprise to me that they just committed to that simple mindset, and that was the thing that won him the game ultimately.
Yeah. I just thought like you said, I just thought the Bengals had it for a large portion of the game. Odell was dominant and it goes out pretty early on. And it just everything lined up for the Bengals to win. The Rams couldn't run the ball. Stafford throws 2 picks, right? The Bengals got a running back to throw a touchdown. And they still managed to fumble this one away. And even a week later, I'm kind of still in awe of that. What'd you think, JJ?
Well, I mean, first of all, I thought the game was a lot closer than it was going to be. I originally thought the game would be close, and in the fourth quarter, late in the third quarter, the Rams would just flex their muscles, and just because they were the better overall team, they would basically outplay the Bengals. And I thought the game was, I think I predicted it like 38-17 or something, and I thought it'd be close in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, the Rams would just, do the Rams and just pull away from the game, right? But what I found out too is the Odell Beckham injury in the second quarter, late in the second quarter, was really big. And then Stafford throws an interception late in this first half. That was also, I think, a momentum builder for the Bengals. And then, of course, you have the refs. Of course, I just think the NFL probably needs to get new refs or do something about it, because almost not as bad in the playoffs, but in the regular season, that was a huge talking point about the refs. And the NFL seems to not want to pay the refs a lot of money and always, go with the cheap route. But that's another thing I think the NFL needs to address in the offseason. But yeah, the T. Higgins play with Jalen Ramsey was clearly a pass interference. And then I think late in the fourth quarter on that last drive the Rams had, I thought there was a few, I think there was like one or two pass interference calls, and one of them I didn't necessarily agree with, but I thought it was more of just like a makeup call from what they didn't call early in the third quarter with the T. Higgins and Jalen Ramsey. But I think overall the game was good. And I think the Rams, it just proves that, Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp are unbelievable. At least Cooper Kupp is. Matt Stafford played great. He did have the 2 interceptions, but outside of that, he played really great. Aaron Donald might be one of the greatest defensive linemen ever. I was kind of surprised too when there was rumors of his retirement. But do you guys think Aaron Donald will actually retire?
No. Yeah,
I don't think so.
And it might be. I think it's pretty easy to say he's the best defensive player of an entire generation. And that includes JJ Watt, who had 3 straight defensive players of the year as well. But you brought up Cooper Kupp. Like, is this the most meteoric rise from a skill position player ever? I mean, he was in the league 4 years, I guess 5, because he tore his ACL that 1 year. So he didn't really play much. No, 4 years. They tore it halfway through the season. But then comes in this year and wins the Triple Crown, has the best playoff season for any receiver ever. Arguably the MVP of the league when you look at the entire season, regular season and postseason. And where'd that come from? Guy had 900 yards last year. Kind of looked like the second best receiver on that team. So if you want to talk about surprises, that whole Cooper Kupp story is pretty wild to me.
Do you have anything else to add about that, Ethan?
Yeah, no, I thought that Cooper Kupp, I mean, I've talked multiple times about how it's the best individual wide receiver season that I think most anyone has ever seen. He had the Triple Crown, was exceptional in all facets of being a wide receiver. A lot of people, one thing that he had always been talked about, he was a really phenomenal route runner, and he always had good hands and had the ability to make a big play anytime the ball was near him. He just needed a quarterback that could really open up his ability to run routes. With Goff's a fine quarterback. He can start in the NFL, but he's limited in his capability and talent to be able to really expand that playbook. Whereas Stafford has so much natural talent and ability that he can come in, really open up that downfield passing attack, let Cooper Kupp run a lot of intermediate routes where all he needs is 1 second of separation and the ball's right in his hand as he turns his head, because that quarterback's so good at timing and getting it to his guys. So that was the missing key for me in Cooper Kupp's. To answer your question, Smith, it's like he just needed a quarterback who was really able to bring the best out of him, and he sure did. And I think he did that for a lot of the guys. Like UC Odell had such a great back end of the year playing for the Rams. He was in the end zone all the time. I think that Matt Stafford knew how talented of a piece he was and really took advantage of that fact.
Yeah, I was just going to say Kupp is absolutely yoked. Did you see him in the Kobe jersey at the parade? He is cut, dude. He's running through arm tackles all season.
Baller.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I agree with what you said, Ethan, about Cooper Kupp. I think why he was able to transform to be one of the best receivers in the league. And I don't know, he might be the best receiver in the league. I'm not sure. I still think probably a healthy DeAndre Hopkins is the best. But I think the reason why Cooper Kupp had such a successful season is because he finally had a great quarterback. Like Jared Goff is solid, but he has to have a good team around him. And I think with how good Matt Stafford was, and no one really realized it until he left Detroit, only really Detroit fans knew how good Stafford was. But I think, just like I said, he had to have a quarterback like Stafford so he could finally transform into one of the best receivers in the league. And I think him and Stafford had one of the best seasons since 2011, when Stafford and Calvin Johnson had so many yards together. So, I mean, I think the whole reason why Cooper Kupp transformed to a mediocre receiver, he was probably solid before that, but I think he's now considered a top 3 receiver just because of how good of a year he had. And speaking of Cooper Kupp and speaking of Aaron Donald, did you agree with Cooper Kupp actually getting the Super Bowl MVP, or did you think a guy like Aaron Donald should have won it, or even Matt Stafford maybe?
Oh, see,
Stafford,
that's a great
picks
question.
made it, took him out for me.
Yeah.
The second one wasn't so much his fault, but that first one really torpedoed a drive, gave the Bengals a chance there in the first half. But I just thought it was Aaron Donald, right? I mean, without Aaron Donald soaking up all of that, all of those blocks, Von Miller probably doesn't have the day he does, or that entire defensive line outside of him. He had 2 sacks. He had the stop in the last play that basically was a sack, right? It ended the game. He's so good, and I feel like he deserves the trophy that says, here, you are the best player that's played in 25 years in the NFL. Obviously, Brady, that's a different thing, right? But outside of quarterbacks, I really do think Aaron Donald is the best player I've ever seen.
Well, and also, this is a good way to answer your last question, JJ, about Aaron Donald, whether he should retire or not. He and Cooper Kupp both kind of did very similar things in this game in regards to when they came on, when it was most important. Like Aaron Donald played a ferocious second half. He got into that skirmish on the sideline, came up pissed off, and then had a dominant performance the rest of the game. Cooper Kupp comes in the back end of the fourth quarter, has 5 receptions on the final drive to be able to get them down the field to score a touchdown. In essence, both of them were MVP caliber players when it counted the most. So I think either of them could have deserved it. But from a retirement standpoint from Donald, you can't retire when you play a game like that. Like you are on the biggest stage in your profession. You're playing the best football on the field by any individual player, probably outside of maybe your teammate on the offensive side of the ball, with argument. But I think that he can't step away. He knows how talented he is. It'd be great to end on a high note and everything. But when your team just won the world championship, you have a chance to repeat. Why not go for glory again and really cement that fact that you are the best defensive player in the history of the NFL?
Yeah, I think the Rams could have been a year early even, because they're going to have most of these guys, if not all of them, back next year, and they could easily go on another run. So I do hope Aaron Donald sticks around. We'll see.
Do you think that, or actually, let me ask you this. Who do you guys think has a better chance of making the Super Bowl next year, the Rams or the Bengals? Because I think I put this on a poll question, but who do you guys think has a better chance of making the Super Bowl next year, LA or Cincinnati?
It's a good question. I would say that, I think that a lot of let's not think about what's going to happen this offseason. I think that if you're looking at the rosters top to bottom and just thinking about how things might shift around, I would say that the Rams probably still are, because they've sold out to build this roster in this short window now where they got guys on contract for the next 3 or 4 years. They want to win now. And I know the Bengals do too, but no one expected it of this team. They're playing in a really tough division in the AFC North that's going to have some competition no matter what every year they do. I just feel, and they're going to be playing a first place schedule. As great as their offense should be again next year, and as great as their defense should be again next year, nothing's easy about making it in the AFC. That division or that conference, specifically with quarterbacks, is just so filled with talent that it might not even be that it's Joe Burrow or the Bengals' fault that they're not in a Super Bowl. It's just that the other teams around them were so poised and talented next year that they didn't get a chance. I think the Rams just have a simpler path in the NFC, perhaps.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, dude. Unless Brady goes to the 49ers, like I've heard some rumors about, the NFC just doesn't nearly have the talent at quarterback that the AFC does. I mean, it's pretty conceivable to me that the Bengals could miss the playoffs next season. You get a better Ravens team. The Steelers get a quarterback. right?
Mhm.
And then the Browns figure out whatever's going on with Baker. I mean, you might not get out of that division. That division's one of the best in football. And then obviously, you know, Mahomes, Allen, Bills, Chiefs, all of these teams, even the Raiders. I really liked our defense this year. If we extend Carr and get a, you know, an offensive line that isn't the most penalized in the league, you know, are hard for the Raiders to do. But like, I like a lot of these teams in the AFC, and you know, until that run late, I didn't think the Bengals were this good. So I think it's more likely the Bengals miss the playoffs than are back in the Super Bowl next season, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that is kind of a good point, because if you look at the Bengals division, I mean, both divisions are great. You look at how good the NFC West is and you look how good the AFC North is, but the NFC West, outside of that division, there's not a lot of great teams in the NFC, because the NFC North is pretty much garbage outside the Packers, and we're not sure what's going to go with Rodgers. Is he going to be there? Is he not? The NFC South with Brady gone now, that division's probably going to be horrible. The NFC East is usually bad. I was kind of surprised they had 2 playoff teams this year. We'll see what happens. Yeah. We'll see what happens there. I just think that, and you talk about the AFC North, the Ravens were just not healthy this year. And then, of course, the nail in the coffin was when Lamar went out, didn't come back. The Steelers, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, but if they get a quarterback, they're going to be good. I mean, Big Ben had probably one of his worst seasons ever, and yet they still made the playoffs. The Browns, Baker Mayfield is a decent quarterback, but I feel like they could upgrade as well. I don't think they're going to this year, but you know, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I feel like both teams are going to be good again. I think the Bengals will make the playoffs again, but I don't think they're winning their division unless the same thing happens this year. The Rams, I don't know. I think Von Miller is a free agent, I believe. So is Odell Beckham. I'm not sure they want to bring Odell Beckham back, because I think Robert Woods is coming back as well from injury. Yep. So I could see the Rams winning, but I feel like both teams are going to be in the playoffs somehow or the other. I could probably see the Rams in more, but I could see the Bengals going too. But again, like I said, we'll see what happens with the AFC North. And again, we'll see if the Rams want to bring back guys like Von Miller, want to bring back guys like Odell Beckham. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Another question too I had was, I think it was the last play for the Bengals. It was let's go back to when it was 3rd and 1. I think they were at the midfield.
Oh yeah.
They decided to run with P. Ryan instead of running with Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's a solid running back. Not a lot of people realize that, but Joe Mixon is probably, I'm not sure he is, but he's probably a top 10 running back, probably 9 or 10. But why do you think Zach Taylor decided to give the ball to P. Ryan instead of, and I know Aaron Donald made an amazing play, but I feel like if they give the ball to Mixon, they probably get a first down. But why do you think Zach Taylor decided to give the ball to P. Ryan instead of Mixon?
It's funny you asked this, because since the inception of our podcast, Ethan has railed against Zach Taylor. Pretty much up until they made the AFC Championship game this year. He started giving him a little credit. And then what does Zach Taylor do? Comes and Zach Taylor's all over the field, gives P-Ron the ball. I just unconscionable. And they signed him through 2026. So I just think it's one of those things. This organization doesn't like to change. Mike Brown, right? I'm not messing up. Yeah, he was there forever, no success. No, Mike Brown's the owner. Who was the coach that was there forever? Why am I blanking?
Marvin Lewis.
Lewis, nice. Yeah. There forever, no playoff wins, right? So this team, they don't even have an indoor practice facility, right? So I honestly think it's because Zach Taylor can be conservative for this franchise, and it's just unfortunate because I love Burrow, I love Chase, I love what they got going on there, but I just think they're hamstrung by the organization. Ethan, you know all about that.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, when it comes to that play in particular, this was a hot topic for us on our last episode when we were talking about it, because it's one of the first things we noticed, right? It's a really important play. It's a 3rd and 1. And not only do you give it to your backup running back who's having a bad day, it's the same exact play that they had run earlier in the game that didn't work out. You know, they had gotten stuffed earlier in the game when P. Ryan ran that play. He just didn't have the power when he hit the hole. And that was a situation where, like I talked about, the coaches not getting in their own way. Zach Taylor got in his own way, very much so, where he thought it's a 3rd down set. We need to truly show that we're in our 3rd down offense. So P. Ryan needs to be in the game. They won't think it's a run. We're going to disguise it well and it'll work. And it didn't work in that instance. Don't try to be fancy. Just go and take your running back who's been powering ahead for yards all game and let him get a first down, call timeout. And now you have some time to really organize the next couple of plays and get downfield for a field goal. But it was just a mistake on Taylor's part.
Dude, the most telling stat about this game is always going to be the P-Ron 2 carries, 0 yards. I mean,
yep.
And you can throw in the target at the end. I'm pretty sure that's when Burrow just kind of got thrown to the ground by Aaron Donald. I've been watching a lot of like couples ice skating for the Olympics because it's very cool to me. They're called twizzles when they like spin them around. Anyway, doesn't matter. But I sometimes wish that coaching decisions were graded live, like these ice skating events, because it would be P Ryan up the middle, same play. It'd be like, ooh, the judges aren't going to take kindly to that. You know what I mean? Like, it's that they're gonna need to do a lot to rebound. I don't know. That was a really dumb analogy, but like there should be some way of quantifying how stupid that was. Right? Like you cost your team maybe your only chance at a Super Bowl ever.
Yeah, and I think Zach Taylor is a good coach, but I don't think he's a great coach. Like I don't know if he's better than Marvin Lewis, because Marvin Lewis had a few years where the Bengals were actually great. And of course, when they got in the playoffs, they choked. But I mean, Zach Taylor is a good coach, but I think the big reason why they made the playoffs this year was because like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and how good that team was. And of course, how many years did they have a top 10 pick? And most of the time they did a pretty good job drafting. But yeah, I think Zach Taylor, I think he's a good coach, but I definitely think he has limitations. We'll see if the Bengals made the right choice when they gave him that extension. But I think he's mostly the reason why the Bengals are so good is because they got guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And I think they're reliant on those guys. And I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Zach Taylor is a good coach. I just don't think he's a great coach is the huge difference, really. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Cincinnati next year. I think they're probably going to make the playoffs again, but we'll see. All right, so let's move away from the Super Bowl. And, of course, the big news I think this is before the Super Bowl actually happened, but Tom Brady, probably the greatest of all time for football at least, he retired. There's been rumors that he's going to come back. I think he can still play, but I don't think he's coming back because I thought that was more of his wife saying, you know, you're done. You've done everything you can. I want you to spend time with us more. But do you guys actually think Brady comes back? Because I think Gronk still thinks that. I don't believe him. But do you guys actually think Brady comes back?
I mean, it would be a very Brady thing to do, but obviously the retirement in that sense, if he goes to San Francisco, was kind of to show the Bucs that he would retire, so they would trade him or release his contract, whatever that is. I don't know. It feels weird. Like I'm 24 and Brady's been in the league 22 years, so it just feels like he should always be in the league. Like I want him to kind of I hated him his whole career kind of until he left the Patriots, and I kind of never want him to leave now. Like he's just part of the NFL. Like just have him out there tossing the coins or whatever. I don't know.
It's Tom Brady's no longer a player and he's not a referee, but every game he has to be there in like a blazer and he flips the coin. That'd be a good bet.
They have like a specially gold jacket for him to wear, and it's like that's Tom. Everyone's like, you go to an NFL game, like you bring your kid to their first NFL game, it's like, we get to see Tom Brady today. It's like, yeah, of course, he's at every game.
And his glimmering golden jacket,
yeah, exactly. He becomes like a folk hero. He's like he's like floating through the stadium.
They have statues of him across the land. Anyway, but
Roger Goodell would love that.
Yeah,
he would love that. He would love that. He'd probably want one in his front yard. Anyway, but Brady, you know, him leaving, I agree with Smith to an extent too. It's kind of like our whole lives for the most part. We've seen Brady playing in the league. He's one of the greatest athletes to ever play in sports. Definitely the greatest football player at all time, especially when it comes to accomplishments. So I don't think he'll come back. You know, I think the whole thing with him leaving New England, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, he's leaving because he's tired of how things are going with Bill, or, oh, his family wants to move somewhere where it's not freezing cold all the time and all these other things. He's pretty much gone and accomplished all the things he wanted to accomplish away from New England. He won a Super Bowl. His family is now in a place that's a little more enjoyable. Like, I'm sure that his wife loves being in warmer weather. You know, I'm sure his family enjoys it as well. his kids are getting older. He wants to be able to have relationships with his family. Then football, you know, as much as he loves the game of football and football has done so much for him, it's not going to be enough to take him away from experiencing life and with his family and things like that. Because he is also a guy who talks so much about how important his father and his whole family is to him. I think he wants to have that same experience with his kids. So even a gross contract from any team that needs a quarterback couldn't draw Tom Brady back, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and our gambling correspondent, Will Einfeld, we did a podcast titled "Go Hang Out with Your Kids, Tom," or something like that, where we talked about like he's never gonna leave. Like he hates hanging out with his family, and then like it's almost like a week or two later, he's gone, and it's like I gotta hang out with my family. I don't know if you guys saw I think it was a tweet, or maybe I saw it quoted on Twitter, but he was basically like, I'm the best quarterback ever, but I'm playing dad at like a JV high school level.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really like, for a guy that was in New England forever, that kind of was stoic, the do your job guy. It was nice to see his personality flourish the last couple of years, and I wanted more. But honestly, if he retires, and I think he will, happy trails to him. I hope he reconnects with his kids. And eats a fast food cheeseburger. I love the memes where he gets all fat, because it's just like, oh yeah, that would be so fun. Like big, like 300 pounds Tom Brady. Not pliable at all, dude.
Well, I mean, it's eventually going to happen with Brady. Eventually, he's going to start eating fast food and stuff like that. He probably will still stick with it for the next 2 years, but eventually, it always comes down to, or it always eventually happens. But it is going to be weird, though, with Brady retiring. We have no more Peyton Manning. Big Ben is now retired. Drew Brees is gone. I mean, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning. I mean, basically, I've pretty much I've grown up with all of those guys playing. So it's going to be weird not to see him. And in a few years, Rodgers is probably gonna quit and not play anymore. So it is going to be weird with all those big time quarterbacks not playing anymore. But again, I think Brady did everything he needed to do. I mean, he won 3 league MVPs. He probably should have won this year because of how good he had a season this year. He won 7 Super Bowls. He won a Super Bowl without Belichick. He's got 5 Super Bowl MVPs. Like, I mean, what else is there to accomplish? And it's kind of like that episode of, I don't know if you guys watch Gridiron Heights or anything like that, but there was one episode, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, where he retires and he thinks, the NFL is done because he's no more playing. Like, no, we gotta keep on going and stuff like that. But I thought that was so true, because like Brady for the last 20 years, outside of Roger Goodell hating him, he's pretty much been the league. So it's going to be weird not to see him. I don't think I think he's going to be with his family for a while. I don't think he's actually going to be like an analyst, because I don't think he'd be that great of an announcer. But I mean, what do you think is next for Brady?
More plastic surgery?
Yeah, more endorsements, I think, for sure.
I think the wrinkles are starting to show under your eyes. If you're listening, Tom, I think you got to go back. I think you're starting to show that you're 45, dude. You might want to get your hair colored again.
Yeah, he does have white hair now. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe all of a sudden he's like, I'm not on TV anymore. Like kind of how Jon Stewart let himself go. He's like just beard, and it's like, oh man, they really do you have next for him, he's gonna keep doing the TB12 stuff, pliability. I kind of want to look into that. Obviously it works. What would be great? I just had this thought. So Tom retires. What is he, 44 now? 5 years goes by as Hall of Famer. That next season he'll be 50. A team, all of the pieces, all of the tools in the toolbox. The quarterback down early in the season, knee exploded. What's that? It's Tom Brady's music. The old man, he trots out onto the field, 50 years old, only active Hall of Famer to ever play a game. That would be fun. I don't know. I just
that'd be pretty good. He's got like an intimidating walk-up song. And it's like Johnny Cash. Like, God's gonna cut you down. It's like all intimidating, walks in.
Yeah, he gets off a horse. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he gets off a horse. Yeah, no, I think that he'll just be really involved in endorsements and stuff. I'm sure that any type of football outlet, media-wise, is gonna want to get their hands on an opportunity with him. He's got so much money. His family has so much money that, frankly, he probably wouldn't have to do anything if he didn't want to. But I think it'll be at least like a year of time before he really goes crazy on anything. I could see his career path ending up being something like Troy Aikman, where like he's just such a well-known figure, and like him or hate him, like people pay attention to what he says when he's on the screen. So I feel like there's an avenue for that if he wants to. But Tom Brady seems more like the guy where he'll pursue commercials and maybe do television, or maybe some type of like small roles in film like he's done in the past. I don't know. It's really endless for him because, like I said, it's literally love him or hate him. You know who he is, so you recognize him, and that pulls for anyone trying to do marketing.
Or he clones himself. The clone hangs out with the family, learns to be a father. You have the montage of him in the apron, baking cookies with the kids and whatever. And he's doing the grind. I don't know. What do you think about that, Ethan? Clone Brady?
That'd be how about with virtual reality expanding? He is the face of the new virtual reality. Like he's like the spokesperson, the famous like you've seen the Simpsons bit in the Simpsons movie where Tom Hanks comes onto the screen and he's like talking about the explosion, but he has like magic fairy dust coming out of his hands to lighten the mood. That'll be what Tom Brady does. He'll just be like the feel good, like, hi, I'm Tom Brady.
Welcome to the Bradyverse. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good one. The Bradyverse would be solid. Anyway, JJ, we are off the rails.
This is what we do. If anyone out there wants to come listen to us, get off the rails. Yeah.
Oh, you're good. I totally understand it. It's going to be interesting to see what Brady does. I mean, he could maybe, I don't know if he has enough money to do this, but he could do maybe like, I think the Mannings are considering possibly owning a franchise like the Broncos. He could possibly go into that, but I just don't think he has the money because of course, his wife has probably got more money than he does, but I don't think he ever actually, because he never took a massive, like he always took pay cuts to get better. So I don't know if his team was actually like, I know Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, they took as much money as they could, and now they have money to possibly own a team, but I don't know if Brady has the money to do that. I mean, he's got his own business, but I mean, it'd be interesting to see if he actually wants to own a team. I mean, maybe he could, own a certain percentage with the Mannings, but I mean, it would be interesting to see if he did that too, but I don't know. We'll see. And what's next for Tampa now? Because they most likely are going to need a quarterback. Blaine Gabbert is clearly not the answer. Kyle Trask, I don't think he's the answer. I mean, I've heard the rumors of maybe, I don't think Rodgers is going to Tampa because the Packers would trade him to the NFC, but do you think a guy like, if Deshaun Watson, when he can actually play next, do you think you could see a guy like Watson in Tampa? Because it is the AFC and the NFC. So, I mean, what do you guys think?
It's kind of tricky, right? Like they're already a desirable location. That team is so talented. Not a lot has changed. Their defense is still extremely stout and very, very like versatile in the amount of talent they have on every level. I think their offense, even without Chris Godwin, still has the ability to hum. They just need to draw or draft another talented wide receiver to pair with Evans in that offense. If Gronk sticks around, they have a solid tight end. Their offensive line's phenomenal. There's opportunity where this team changes enough that they might not be able to just draw any name they want. But from my thought, I would say that if you're a free agent, what's not to like about Tampa compared to any other team? You have a great coach who's won a Super Bowl. You have a team that is capable of being in a Super Bowl, still technically in their window, just short of a quarterback. Like if I were Tampa Bay, I'd take any opportunity at Russell Wilson if the price isn't too high for asking. I know the Raiders want to keep Derek Carr around, but that would be a great quarterback to plug into a team like that to try to win a championship. And even on a lower level, to just save money, don't doubt the idea of them looking at Jameis Winston again. Like it's crazy because, he tore his ACL and people are like, oh, why would they bring him back to the organization? Well, he's a low cost value where you can bring him in and, he has relationships in the building already. So why not be able to just step in right away at a low cost, bridge the gap between what you're looking for. And, if I'm them, you have a first round pick for a reason. You have so many talented players in your team. Draft a quarterback. They took Kyle Trask last year in a later round pick. I believe he was their second round pick. And they took him with the hopes that he'd maybe develop behind Brady, learn a couple things. From what I've heard, it seems like that organization's kind of out on Kyle Trask and his ability to be the future. So if they like the class enough this year, find a guy you believe in, draft him, put a quarterback into place for this season that can help you get to the playoffs, help you win now while you still have the win now team. And if it happens to be Russell Wilson or it happens to be Deshaun Watson, if all that's cleared up, I don't doubt the Buccaneers are going to pursue every avenue.
Yeah, it's really quarterback or bust for them, right? Like,
right.
You have the pieces. Depending on if you bring Godwin back, you could fill that role in the offense, the receiver next to Mike Evans, a slot guy. But if you don't get the quarterback, this team isn't going anywhere. I do, blow it up at that point, right? You got your Super Bowl. I do believe Super Bowl and then a rebuild, kind of a la the Eagles, is always a fun move because your fan base is going to be fine with it, right? Because you just won a Super Bowl, so they don't really have much to complain about. So the Bucks fans got to be ecstatic with how the Brady era went, even just for 2 years.
And it shows too, right? Like, you can be a team that sells out for a Super Bowl for one season and then afford to do a rebuild, like, because you just said it. Now your fans and a league-wide level of attention is focused on you for at least the next couple of years. And I think the New Orleans Saints are like a great example of that. They won their Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and they were still a phenomenal winning team. But, they were in the national eye around the league.
It's been a while now,
dude. But I
do this. I do this all the time on the show. I say a couple, and I really mean like beyond 10 years.
But I think that's a really good point, though. That's kind of, I've always said I said this with the Rams, a title is worth 10 years, right? So that's why Sean Payton left. Some rumors he might go to the Cowboys or whatever. But that's why you leave if you're Sean Payton. He had that buffer of forever because he won the Super Bowl. New Orleans got over the hump. So it's kind of the same thing here. Like, I don't think Bruce Arians is long for this team without Brady, right? They got to figure out a lot of stuff there. I don't know if Byron Leftwich is the answer. Maybe Bowles. Or did Bowles leave?
No, he's still there. I think he's still there.
Yeah. Right? So he could take over, but I don't know.
I guess my final thought on this too is that it's really hard to tell what they want to win now. But no team really has the formula, because the only team in these last few years, see, even that makes it sound like not a lot, in the last decade, let's say, the Patriots are the only example of an organization that has repeatedly had success in the postseason when it comes to winning championships. And so no team necessarily has that formula. The Bucks, of course, want to get the best possible quarterback in the building because they think they know the formula since they won a couple of years ago. And time will tell if that's the case. But while you're in that moment, you got to do everything you can to swing for the fences. And I know there's a lot of teams outside of the Bucks who are going to be trying to do the same.
Yeah. Where do you think they should go, JJ?
For Tampa, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to be that great next year, because if they don't get a good quarterback, I don't think Gronk is coming back, because the only reason why Gronk came back in the first place is because of Brady. I don't think they have the money to pay Godwin. There's a few players on defense that's a free agent. You also have Leonard Fournette. I think he's also a free agent.
He is a free agent.
I think Ronald Jones still has 1 year left in his contract, I believe. I just don't know. I mean, Tampa will, if they get a decent quarterback, they'll probably be a playoff team, because again, that division, the NFC South, is pretty much garbage. I mean, New Orleans isn't probably going to be good. Carolina's been terrible the last few years. Atlanta, they're getting worse, I think. I really don't know. I mean, Jameis Winston makes sense, but I'm not sure if they want to bring him back or if he actually wants to go. I think he's going to end up staying in New Orleans. There are some decent quarterbacks out there. Like, there is Teddy Bridgewater, who's a free agent. I don't think he's going back to Denver. He did an all right job last year.
Is he still alive?
Bridgewater?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
when he murdered himself, like the second last week of the season.
When he fell and hit.
That's when Drew Lock started, because Teddy
and Drew Lock's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Horrible concussion.
I think Bridgewater's a great name, though, JJ. I think that's a really overlooked name.
No, That division, though, on your point, it is going to be dreadful if someone doesn't figure it out. I do not trust Rule. Falcons, who knows? They might blow it up. Saints might have the defense. They might blow it up, right? I mean, that could be an 8-9 division winner.
Yeah, it's similar to the NFC North, too, because if they lose Rodgers, if Rodgers does get, in fact, traded, I mean, the Vikings could possibly be a decent team, but they were the second best team of that division, and they went 8-9. And I think Detroit is still 1 or 2 years away, even if Dan Campbell is the answer. They still got to figure out their quarterback situation. Chicago, I mean, is Justin Fields going to be good? He kind of struggled last year, but he did kind of have a trash team, and now he has a new coach. I don't think Matt Eberflus was a great hiring, especially for developing Justin Fields. We'll see what happens, but I mean, that the Buccaneers really have a choice, and they could draft a quarterback too and keep him, because most of the quarterbacks this year in the draft, you'd have to have them sit for a year or two, because I don't think any of them are first day starters. But I think drafting a quarterback and signing a guy like Winston or Bridgewater, or, I mean, you could sign Fitzpatrick, bring him back as well, and draft a quarterback and him develop. I don't know what Tampa's really going to do, but I do think Tampa still has a chance to win that dreadful division right now. So we'll see what happens. Another question too, kind of a big story right now, is Kyler Murray. He's been all over the news recently with him unfollowing the Cardinals. I guess he's unhappy. There was a rumor, I think I saw it on Reddit, so it's not exactly true, but after losing to the Rams, he said he was done. And I'm not sure if that means he was done with playing football, or done with the Cardinals, or just done with that game overall. But what do you guys think of the whole Kyler Murray situation?
Ethan, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. I personally, whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer, I think he should just cut his losses and go play baseball. He was a very he was a very high draft pick in Major League Baseball. He would get paid so much money to go play for the A's. They still technically own his rights, I believe, since they were the team that drafted him. So he could immediately step away from this whole situation with football if he's really not all that into it. Now, do I think that's the case? I'd say it's really hard to be the number 1 overall pick and a starting quarterback of a franchise in the NFL and not love the game of football. So I think that more than anything else, this is just a guy who's disgruntled and pissed, because put yourself in his shoes, right? You're this franchise quarterback who basically got brought into this organization that was drafting first overall, brand new head coach, changing of the guard. Like, now you are supposed to be the savior coming in, this dynamic quarterback that's going to change everything for our franchise. And granted, in his first couple of years being their quarterback, they've won games a lot more than people expected. He's been a very phenomenal quarterback when he's healthy. And so I think that the biggest issue is that when he got hurt this year, him underperforming made a lot of the backlash be towards him, being, oh, Kyler Murray's bad. Kyler Murray's poor play is the reason the Cardinals didn't reach their full potential this year. And granted, much of that could be agreed upon, but I would say that putting all that pressure on him, if I were in his shoes, I'd be pissed off too. I'd be pretty pissed off at my organization kind of using me as a scapegoat, rather than being like, hey, don't listen to the noise. We are behind you 100%. You're our guy. We're going to win a championship with you as our QB. And if he really doesn't feel like that's the case, and those feelings are reciprocated by both parties in this situation, go play baseball, dude. You'll have just as much success, in my opinion. That's what I think.
Him and our other co-host, Mike, brought this up in our last podcast. I totally forgot they said it. It shocked me again, because it's just like no one watches baseball and no one cares about baseball. You haven't played baseball in 3 years. I think it's kind of a leap to be like, stop doing what you're doing professionally at a very high level and go do something that is like more of a pipe dream than anything. Like, he's extremely fast, but like, I don't know, man. He's 24. I'd give it more than 3 seasons. Also, Cliff Kingsbury could do a little bit more to help him out. The guy looks lost on the sideline.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, no better example than the first round game against the Rams. Like, Sean McVay had his struggles this playoffs, but Cliff just got outclassed. And I'm worried that if that continues to be the marriage, that Kyler, whether it's like a lack of height or, ability to adjust in game himself, paired with Cliff Kingsbury inability to adjust, is just kind of going to be a disaster, 11-6 and out of the playoffs in the first round type team every season.
Well, to really like simplify the bones of my thought, it's kind of more like, if I'm Kyler Murray, am I going to get an extension on a contract in the NFL where it's like 5 years, whatever they're going to give me? Let's say like 5 years, $100 million.
But it's going to be like,
it's going to be way. I know. We're just saying a random number though, right? Like, it's not in hindsight, it's not that great. Whereas like in Major League Baseball, you can go, and if you play one phenomenal season, you can get a 10-year contract worth like $350 million or something crazy like that, like $400 million over 10 years, where sure, you're committed to playing for a team in a 10-year span, but you're also playing a non-contact sport where risk of injury is mitigated and you can make just as much, if not more money. And it doesn't matter how much viewing there is for Major League Baseball. Like, no matter what, as many fans of sports will be like, baseball is boring. Oh my God. Baseball draws. It makes money. They always have a fan base. I don't think it's America's pastime really anymore, but at the same time, it will always have a market and ability to sell. So there's always going to be money for these players. And I think that it would be a really low risk, high reward situation for him if he were to choose it. But JJ, what do you think? Less about the baseball aspect of Kyler Murray, but what do you think he should do about his situation? You think that he needs to stay in Arizona and they need to try to mend this relationship? Do you think that he tries to find his way out? What do you think the solution should be?
Well, I think I kind of see both of your arguments here. Yes, baseball doesn't get as much hype or doesn't get as much viewership as the NFL or the NBA. But if it's a postseason game, that's where majority of the viewership from baseball comes from, because like hockey too is the same way. It's all right in the regular season, but when it comes down to the postseason, that's where it's at. But you also talked about too, with Kyler Murray, he can make almost as much money as a quarterback. But with him, if he gets a 10-year, $300 million contract in baseball, he's going to have less pressure and not as many people are going to be dependent on him. Like, you have to win a World Series, right? With the quarterback, if you get paid that much, you have to win a Super Bowl. In baseball, I mean, you can look at a guy like Mike Trout. He signed that massive contract. He barely made I don't think he's ever won a playoff game in the series and stuff like. Same thing with Bryce Harper. He signed that massive contract with Philly, yet to make the playoffs. So there's less pressure, but I altogether, I think this is just a smokescreen, and eventually this will all be mended out. I say that a lot of times, and normally it doesn't happen, but I just can't see him leaving this year. I think you have to at least give him one more year. I think the Cardinals should pay him, but they're probably going to wait another year. I don't know if Cliff Kingsbury is that great of a coach. I mean, you look at what he did at Texas Tech, he got fired and then somehow was promoted to a head coach in the NFL. So I think that was kind of the downside of the Cardinals. I really don't know if Kingsbury is the answer, but I do think Murray is. And I just think that you need to give one more year. But the Cardinals are kind of a strange team too, because the last 2 years or last 3 years, they've started off really hot and then they've cooled down significantly toward the end of the season. So that might be Kingsbury himself. And probably a little bit of that is Murray, but that could mostly be Cliff Kingsbury. And, you know, if next year doesn't work out, then I would probably say get a new head coach, because of course Kingsbury is going to be on the hot seat with what the Cardinals did last offseason. They signed JJ Watt. They traded for DeAndre Hopkins 2 years ago. I think he's going to be in the hot seat. And if he doesn't win another playoff game, they're in trouble. But I think you just need to give one more year. But we'll see what happens with Arizona, because we still have an offseason left to go as well. Another thing too is, do you guys think that Rodgers is out of Green Bay? We've been talking about this the last few episodes, but do you think Rodgers is going to get traded, or do you think he's going to go one more year in Green Bay?
Well, as we all know, I mean, big fans of his relationship with Shailene Woodley, and unfortunately that came to end.
We did talk about that a lot.
No, but literally never seen anything that she's in. But regardless, super big fan of her work. But she breaks up with him because he's putting his football career first. So that makes you feel like he's going to go for a into his 40s run, kind of like Tom Brady, right? I think the smart money is on he stays in Green Bay, because like you said, I mean, the Vikings just fired their head coach. Kirk Cousins can't win a meaningful game to save his life. You know, Bears, Justin Fields, that franchise feels tortured unless Fields can pull him out of there. Lions, I mean, you know, NFL Siberia, it's just the best situation. The NFC doesn't have as many good quarterbacks or good teams. So if he leaves just to go to the Broncos in a loaded division in a loaded conference, like I just think that's kind of stupid, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd have to agree. And, I think that his best situation is just to stay put. This team is very capable of winning a championship. I think they've come up short in the postseason the past couple of years, but there's plenty of talent on the roster, offensively and defensively. I would say that this defense last year was maybe one of the best that's ever played for Rodgers on his team. I think that it would be really hard to keep Rodgers and Devontae Adams, but I don't know if you get one without the other. I think that Rodgers doesn't really want to stay if Adams is gone, and vice versa. If Adams knows that Rodgers is out, then he's going to be out. But I also heard reports this week where the Broncos have been trying to call the Packers to see options about getting Rodgers, and no one's picking up the phone. So I think that Green Bay has their mindset where they were like, all right, we did this dance last year. Jordan Love is underperforming. He's not very good. We're going to stick with Rodgers. He's going to keep us in a playoff mindset. And we're going to see if we can deal Jordan Love maybe away for some value. But he belongs in Green Bay, in my opinion. That team, you're not going to find a much easier team to get on right away and make your way to a Super Bowl.
The frozen tundra, cold as his lonely heart.
Hey, he loves it up there. That's fine. Maybe the cold is what keeps that heart so solid that the only love for him is winning football games in the winter. That's it.
Hey, not in January.
Not in winter, yeah. Well, in part
November,
of
December, loves winning, in the new year. Oh God. I love watching Aaron Rodgers play. I just can't figure out his playoff thing. Like, I know it's going to happen. This year was the most spectacular loss I think any of us have ever seen. 2 special teams mishaps to swing a game with that few points. I don't know if we'll ever see something like that again. They brought in Bisaccia, sorry.
Bisaccia, yeah.
Yeah, the Raiders interim head coach. So fix that problem, hopefully. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Rodgers should stay pat, JJ?
I think he should, because he's not going to get anything better. I mean, you just pointed it out. Denver is not as loaded, though, as you think. I mean, they have some solid pieces there, but I think there's a lot of question marks on theirs. And, of course, Nathaniel Hackett has a great relationship with Rodgers, or what we're told, and he's, of course, the head coach. But, I mean, plus that division is loaded. I mean, you got Mahomes, you got Justin Herbert, you got Derek Carr. If he goes that division, he's going to be the second best quarterback, and he's probably going to be playing the wild card round all the time. So, do you really want to go to the Broncos? I mean, you're not going to go to an NFC team most likely. And if you don't go to Denver, I mean, where else? I mean, I think Miami's going to keep Tua. I don't know what Washington's going to do at their quarterback situation. I mean, outside of there's nowhere else he's going to go. I mean, he could go to New Orleans, but they're in salary cap hell right now. So I really don't know where he's best for. And I think Denver is really the only choice, and Denver's still worse than Green Bay. And he has it much better with the Packers because, again, that division is just really garbage, to be honest with you. So I think he should stay. I mean, he said he's going to make a decision before or during free agency, before the draft. So we'll see. I don't know how good Jordan Love is. I think you still need to give Jordan Love some time. And I think if he has one more year, that's just only going to help him more. So I think really he needs to stay. But I mean, we still have a lot of time, and, free agency starts next month now, I guess a little less than a month now. So we'll probably know by next month. But another guy too that I'm intrigued with, and I'm a huge fan of him, we talked about him earlier, I think he's going to get that extension. But what do you think is up with the Lamar Jackson situation in Baltimore? And do you think he'll get a contract this year, or do you think they'll have to wait next year? Because, again, he doesn't have an agent. His mom is basically his agent or represents him. What do you think Baltimore is going to do? When do you think they're actually going to pay Jackson? And what do you think Baltimore is going to do this offseason?
I like them.
Right?
Yeah, and I like them to do it this offseason too. I wouldn't be surprised. I think him being injured this past year kind of showed 2 things, right? The organization saw that him not playing was really their Achilles heel, and that their offense had no juice when he wasn't playing. So in that regard, you're like, all right, we got to give this guy a contract. He makes our offense go. In the other sense, you're like, okay, well, now he's injured and he misses a lot of weeks during the season. Now his value immediately goes down. I think that it more comes down to how much Lamar Jackson enjoys and wants to be the franchise quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. I think he loves being that franchise's leader, that face of the team. I think that he would be happy to take a little bit less money to continue being with that organization, because they quite literally, we talked about this on our show a lot this season. They are an example of a team that didn't get a coach who had a philosophy and said, all right, we're going to do it my way. It was very much a team that was like, we're going to get this quarterback and we're going to change our entire offensive philosophy to fit around him, because ultimately his dynamic ability and his unique ability is what's going to make us a better offensive football team. So I think in that sense, and you were talking about their cap situation, lock him down now.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you got him on the books. You can move money around later on if you need to, but that position's secure. And now focus on that offensive line, getting him some protection. Focus on some defensive depth. You've had issues with that all year.
Let's try a big
focus
body
on
receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone. Hopefully, Bateman works out.
What about Marquise Brown, dude? Marquise Brown might retire and be a Twitch streamer. I think it's kind of hilarious, like all of this stuff in the social media age. It's like these guys get famous and they don't really even need football because there's so many ways to market yourself and make money. But sometimes players getting hurt hurts their contract value. But I just feel like in Lamar's case, they were easily a playoff team with him. They looked like they were rolling to a number one seed or a division title. And then he goes out and immediately they can keep it close. Harbaugh does a good job, but they're losing these games. He's only 24. Like, you're going to have to back up the Brinks truck for Lamar Jackson and Mama Jackson, because I don't know if she gets a 10% cut, but
she gets something. I can tell you that.
I imagine she's going to get something for negotiating this. Very weird situation with that. But the bigger concern with him isn't the ankle injury was on a dirty play. I forget who did it.
I think was it Myles Garrett?
Oh, no, it was the Browns, wasn't it? Was it Myles Garrett?
It was the Browns. It was either Garrett.
It might have been Clowney. Yeah, it might have been Clowney.
Okay.
But he never gets hurt outside of that play. And then, but I'm concerned about the stomach thing, right? He keeps having illness and missing practices and then games. Obviously, at the Monday Night Football game where he runs the locker room. So, like, if that kind of does the sort of situation, I don't want to get too into his business, but like, it seems like, I don't know how much you want to pay to a guy who can't play, but if that's all good, then just go forward. You got your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think the last few years, because I know 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago when they were against the Steelers, he got COVID, couldn't play. And then he had an illness that wasn't COVID against the Bears this year and missed. And then, of course, he got hurt against the Browns. So injuries aren't really the problem. I think it's just the illness. But I think the Ravens should have paid him last year, really, because they could have probably got a deal, because if he wins a Super Bowl next year, they're going to have to pay him a hefty amount. And similar to what they did, they waited a while to sign Joe Flacco. And when they did finally pay him, they had to pay him a lot of money. At that time, it was a lot, and they didn't have enough money to get other players. So I think the Ravens really should pay him now, but they're probably not going to, and they're going to wait another year. And I think that's very risky. They could pay him what they could do what the Cowboys did and paid Prescott, but I could see him, I guess, getting franchise tagged, but that's just delaying the inevitable. So they got to pay him now, but I think they're going to end up waiting another year, but we'll see what happens. All right. I want to talk about the draft, but we're kind of running out of time. So if there's anything else you guys want to add before we end the interview.
I just want to say thank you for having us on. This has been a blast. I was joking with my sister earlier. This is kind of like the white dude version of getting asked to prom. Getting asked on that. Like, would you come to my NFL podcast or my sports podcast? I'm like, absolutely. Oh my God, what am I gonna wear? But it's been an absolute blast, man. Thank you.
Yeah, JJ, seriously, the conversation's been awesome. Fantastic questions. Like, you just seem like you love the game as much as we do. So it's been a blast to be able to be on the show and chatting with you.
Yeah, again, thanks for coming on last second notice, and hopefully this comes out. The audio will come up first and the video eventually. But thanks again for coming on. I also enjoyed talking about almost any type of sports, but especially the NFL. And again, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can do this in the future.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We'd love to have you on the 432. Maybe get you on some draft stuff with the Ethan's mocks.
You betcha. We'd love to have you in some off-season stuff, JJ. You just say the word, man, and we'll get you on.
All right, I'd love to come on. We'll see what happens, but yeah, again, I would definitely love to come on. So again, thanks for coming on. Don't forget to check out the 4th and 32 podcast. You can get them on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Again, all the descriptions will be down, or the descriptions will all be down below. And again, thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the draft, enjoy the offseason, everything else. It's revolving around the NFL.
Yeah, happy combine.
Happy combine. It's like the holiday season is here. But yeah,
exactly.
thanks again, JJ. Same to you for this upcoming season, man.
All right, thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of the night.
Peace.
Yep, same to you.